What is up everyone, Movie Worm back again with another video, and this is going to be another 10 random movie recommendations from this collection behind me right here. Now I just done this on a bit of a whim last time, about a month ago, when I just came and looked at my collection and just picked 10 movies that I thought I could recommend to you guys, whether you want to stream them, just watch them some other way, or just add them to your collection when you're out Blu-ray hunting or whatever. And I just pick these, like I said, at random. There is no specific filter or anything that goes with these movies. I basically just looked at the collection and thought, yeah, this will do. And there are my reasons for picking them, of course. So let's just get into it now with number 10. I have tried to rank them from worst to best, but really, I recommend all of these movies anyway. Worst is a bad word because they're all pretty good. So number 10 is Orphan. Now, if there is any movies in this that aren't by random, it's going to be this one, even though it still kind of is. But the reason that I caught this with my eye is because Orphan First Kill is actually coming out later on this month, and I thought, you know what, this is a really good time to watch this with the new one coming out. And it's actually a pretty underrated horror movie in my opinion. Not so much in the horror community, but for the average movie viewer, you may not have seen this one. And this all follows around a family who lose their child, starring Vera Farmiga and Peter Sarsgaard. And they lose their child and they want to adopt, and when they go to this adoption agency, Esther catches their eye, this young Russian girl, and they decide to take her home and give her a better life. But once they do, some sinister and weird things start happening around the house. The couple starts arguing over her, thinking, you know, one of them wants to blame her for all this stuff that's happening. The other one is kind of defending her and stuff like that. But it just goes down some creepy paths. Now, I'm not going to say too much more about this, but there is a great ending to this movie. And like I said, this not being too unpopular in the horror community, it is considered one of the best twist endings out of all these lesser known films, if you like. So Orphan is a really, really good horror film that I highly recommend, especially with the new one coming out later on this month. Now, I thought I'd get an animated movie in here, and I've been picking up a lot of these Batman animated movies lately, and I recently just watched the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the Netflix film, and them two coming together also made me catch the eye of this in my collection, and as Batman versus the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm a big fan of the Turtles as a kid, not too much anymore, but I did grow up watching the TV show, and I've always been a big Batman fan, so you could say this was a bit of a match made in heaven for me. But I never ever expected this movie to be as good as it actually is. This is a solid 9 out of 10 film. It's probably my favourite of all the Batman animated movies, to be honest, that I've seen. And these two are just go together really well, the gang of turtles and Batman, of course. And it's got some really funny moments in it that kind of just catch you off guard, because you just don't expect it to be that funny, and they just make you laugh your ass off. But the chemistry that all the characters have on screen is great, and I really like the idea of all these Batman villains being turned into these mutant type versions of themselves, because that's kind of what the Turtles fight in their TV show. But really great voice acting, of course. I mean, I think you always get that in these Batman animated movies anyway. Really love the animation too, and it's just got a really good story attached. So, believe it or not, this is actually a fantastic movie and one of the better animated Batman films out there, if not the best from what I've seen. So definitely recommend this if you're a fan of either of these, or definitely if you're a fan of both of these characters. Next up is going to be one from the 101 Films collection, and I picked this up in the sale and had not really any idea about it, and I just went off a whim really. And the thing that drew me in more than anything is this director by Sean S. Cunningham, who made Friday the 13th, and this is The New Kids. Nice little box here edition that we get, and this is from 1985, I believe, could be earlier, it's definitely an 80s movie anyway. And this follows this brother and sister who, their parents die at the very start of the movie in a car crash, so they have to go and stay with their relatives. And one of the kids in the town who goes to the school that's the same as these take a liking to this female character, and she sort of knocks him back, and he will not take no for an answer. So it's about him and his gang terrorizing this brother and sister, and they decide to fight back, but it just goes down too many far routes. I mean, it just gets really, really out of hand, and some really violent shit starts happening in this movie, and something out of nothing really just goes in too many sinister directions. But it's a really, really fun movie from the 80s. I really dug it. I got really into this film. It's just a fun time for me, really. And James Spader, who's the bully in this, he put a really good performance in. Beware though, there is some animal cruelty in this movie, which isn't for the faint of heart. I mean, I can really watch anything, but some of the animal cruelty there has made me wince a little bit. But overall, a really, really good film, especially if you like your 80s movies and your violence. So yeah, The New Kids, definitely one worth picking up or just viewing on streaming. Next up is going to be one of my favourite comedies of all time, from the creators of South Park, Trey Parker and Matt Stone, and that is BASEketball. So this is basically a really fun concept about these two sports of basketball and baseball merged together. So these two guys are real losers in this movie, and they can't really play sports. They're just very good at putting the basketball in the hoop without running around or anything like that. And they decide to play these other guys on their lawn and just say, yeah, we're going to use baseball rules here. So they invent this sport with basketball and baseball, and it becomes a bit of a phenomenon. People start coming to the lawn and cheering them on and watching all the baseball matches, and this billionaire called Ted Denslow decides to make it a global phenomenon and an official sport, a professional sport of basketball. But what the real charm about this movie is, you're allowed to put your opponent off by any means possible, and some of the things that the characters come out with in this film to put the others off their shot is absolutely hilarious. But it's just a really, really fun sports film, to be honest, and a really cool concept. And they've got this other guy in their team called Squeak Scolari, who they're always making fun of, and it's just a really, really good time. I find this movie absolutely hilarious, one of my favourite comedies of all time, and it's just got a little bit of charm to it as well. So definitely recommend this, especially if you're into the humour of South Park and stuff. It's very, very silly at times, but this is my type of humour, and one way of checking out another on the 101 Films collection, that is BASEketball. Next up, we have one of my favourite movies from the 90s, and that is The Negotiator with Samuel L. Jackson and Kevin Spacey. Yes, I mean, whatever you think of him, it's more of the movie for Samuel L. Jackson, this, and his performance and his story arc in this. And this is basically about Samuel L. Jackson, who is a professional negotiator working for the police, obviously, and he is sort of framed for this murder. So no one believes him. You know, he's gonna get done for it and stuff, and he sees a last chance saloon by coming into the police station and taking everyone hostage, trying to get down to the bottom of these people who framed them. And the negotiator sort of goes to the opposite end of his job and has to be talked down by Kevin Spacey's character. But it's a really, really good thrill ride, you know, there's very, very tense moments in it. But Samuel L. Jackson is off the scale in this. I just think he's an actor who makes so many fun films, especially in the 90s era, and this is definitely one of them. A film that keeps you guessing till the end. You don't quite know the outcome, the mystery, what's happening behind the scenes here, and I like films like that where it just keeps you on edge and keeps you thinking. But a lot of great characters as well that he takes hostage and stuff, who he talks to, and he kind of what a negotiator would do with hostages as well, which you would never see. He kind of tries to keep everyone calm and stuff like that, and talking these hostages down not to do anything silly at the same time, like he would if they were criminals. So it really does take the whole concept of being a negotiator and throw it about everywhere in this movie. But really, really good film, highly recommended, and one of my favourite Samuel L. Jackson movies. Next up is going to be a film that really surprised me, and that is Life. Now, this is kind of a movie that reminds me a lot of Alien, but kind of does it in its own way at the same time. So this is basically a group of characters on board the space station, and they have found this matter. I think it might be from the planet Mars, but I'm not entirely sure. And this matter just keeps growing and growing, and eventually it breaks out and starts to kill off the characters one by one around the space station, and just get bigger and bigger, and the threat of it actually looms into something much more than they could ever imagine. And I just think it's a very good, tense sci-fi thriller / horror movie. It does take a lot of the elements from Alien, I'm not gonna lie, but for me, I could sort of separate them films at the same time, because I wouldn't say it totally rips it off or anything like that. But if you like that film, there's something for you here, definitely. Thought all the characters were really fun in this, and there is an ending that I didn't see coming, which really threw me off guard. But Jake Gyllenhaal, Rebecca Ferguson and Ryan Reynolds are all characters that we like to see in movies, and they're all together here. So some really cool kill scenes in this as well. Definitely recommend this. I'm not really one of them people who adores sci-fi epics that are out in space and stuff like that, but this is definitely one of the better ones for me, and one that really caught me off guard. I highly enjoyed this movie, definitely recommend it. Looked great in 4K as well. That is Life. Next up is going to be a David Lynch movie that not too many people speak about when talking about his films, because they're always mentioning Blue Velvet, The Elephant Man and Mulholland Drive, and this is definitely one of his more weirder ones, and that is Lost Highway. I would say Eraserhead as well even gets talked about more than this mostly, but for me, I think this is one of his best movies. It's probably in my top 3 David Lynch films, to be honest, and it stars Bill Pullman and Patricia Arquette in something that is really scary at times. Basically, it's just about them two, and they keep getting left these videotapes on their doorway, and when they go in, they realize that someone is filming them from the outside, you know, filming them in the house and stuff through the windows and everything, and it's a really creepy movie. But the film halfway through does sort of flip on its head a little bit there, and that's when it starts to not make a lot of sense and goes in a totally different direction. But I do like that part of the story as well. It's really a film of 2 stories, but both of them are really interesting at the same time, with great performances all around, and I really love the cinematography and the look of this film. I've always liked the colour palette that David Lynch goes for in his movies. He's got like a kind of a blurred background in a lot of his films. It's kind of hard to explain, but it just works for me. And there's a character in this who is absolutely terrifying, and there's a moment in a party where this character comes up to Bill Pullman, and I was just watching it going, wow man, I don't feel good watching this. This is making me feel really uneasy. So it's a really strong film from him, and I think we're getting a 4K of this soon, but definitely one worth picking up anyway, and one of David Lynch's best movies for me. He is one of my favourite directors, up there with Quentin Tarantino and Martin Scorsese, in my top 3 directors ever, and this is one of his finest pieces of work. So that is Lost Highway. Next up is going to be another bit of a sinister film, but a lot more straightforward than David Lynch's Lost Highway, and that is The Hitcher. Now, this is the German release, Hitcher, the Highway Killer. As you can tell, this is the only version I think you can get on Blu-ray, but I think Second Sight are bringing a 4K soon, so look out for that. This is actually a digibook edition, which I think might be the only digibook I actually own, and this is about a guy who picks up a hitchhiker late at night in the Badlands of America, basically in the outback, if you like, and things start to go very sinister and horrific very quickly for this guy who's picked up this hitchhiker. And this hitchhiker is called John Ryder, and this guy is absolutely insane and unbelievably captivating psychopath, if you like, that you just can't take your eyes off, played by Rutger Hauer. He, for me, is one of the best villains in movie history, and this guy just cannot get away from him. He is playing a cat and mouse game with him all across the rural outback of America, and he will not let him get a minute's peace when he tries to get away from him. It's a really strong horror movie that takes place on the road, and I love horror films that do that. You know, I've always found them interesting. Roadkill is another one, but nowhere near as good as this movie, and it is the performance of Rutger Hauer that does it for me. It just, like I said, you can't take your eyes off the guy. There's a moment in a police station that you're just watching it going, wow, why isn't this movie talked about more? It's an absolute masterpiece in my opinion, and one of the most underrated films of all time. This definitely get more praise, I feel, and I highly recommend you picking this up, especially when Second Sight bring it out. There's a moment as well where a person is attached to a vehicle. I'm not going to say anything more than that, but you are watching it going, oh my goodness gracious me. So The Hitcher, if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. Just one of in my top 100 movies of all time easily, and that is The Hitcher. Next up is going to be a zombie flick that I watched for the first time a year or two ago, and I've done a full review for this on the channel, which will be down below if you want to check it out, and that is Train to Busan. This is a Korean movie, I believe, and this basically takes place all on a train, believe it or not. Now, this train does actually depart with all these characters on just as a zombie outbreak occurs. So they're kind of getting away from all of that in the city, but it does actually attach itself to the train, and it's about these characters who have to move all the way up the train to get away from these zombies who are absolutely terrifying in this movie. They are relentless, they look awesome, and they do not stop, and neither does this movie. I feel like a train movie should usually be fast-paced, especially if there's a lot of action and horror involved, and this movie does not stop. It absolutely lives up to its name, and there's a lot more to it than just zombies on a train as well. There's a lot of, you know, human elements involved, how we should all, you know, treat each other better, and how low humans can go when it comes to, you know, surviving and stuff like that. And you really do want this guy and his daughter to kind of make it, you know, to this last stop to Busan. But there's so many great moments in this, especially a scene where they have to stop at a station and the zombies just come for all the characters and stuff. And for me, this is definitely the second best zombie movie ever made, behind Dawn of the Dead. Yes, I know it's a more modern horror movie, but that does not matter to me because I had such a good time with this. There was hardly anything wrong with it, and it's just a fantastic movie. I know they're remaking it, you know, American styled, and it's going to be called Train to New York or something. Whether that turns out very good or not, I do not know, but I will be absolutely amazed if it's anywhere near as good as this film. I think these foreign or Korean movies just give us something different, don't they? And this is no exception. Train to Busan is an absolutely exceptional film that you have to check out at number 2. Next up though is going to be Dead Man's Shoes. For me, one of the greatest British films of all time, from director Shane Meadows, who brought us films like Summer's Town and This Is England. But for me, this is definitely his best work. A movie I put off for such a long time. My dad always told me to watch it, and I was just put off by the cover and stuff. I just didn't fancy it. It looked very low budget, and I just put it off for a while, and I had to go and thank my dad when I finally watched it for recommending this. And it is low budget, but what Shane Meadows has done with the budget he has here to turn this film into something so grounded and realistic and something you can't take your eyes off was nothing short of an exceptional achievement. This follows Paddy Considine, who comes home from the army and finds out that these drug dealers who were kind of running this town were not very nice to his brother while he was away. His brother, who has special needs and stuff, and they were kind of bullying him. So he starts to maybe seek a bit of revenge there and starts taunting with all these drug dealers. Don't want to say too much more than that, but the story that follows is amazing, and you just can't take your eyes off it. There is scenes at the start, in the first 5 minutes really, it just sets the movie up, where I just sat back in my seat and went, whoa, and it just sets it up right there that you are in for a ride. And there's other parts of the film that has become very famous on social media and stuff. Everyone posts it all the time, where this guy walks up to Paddy Considine and Paddy Considine just isn't scared one little bit. He's just such a cool character in this. It's an exceptional performance, it really is. So many great moments in this that I would go into in a spoiler review, which I am planning on doing one day. I am planning on reviewing this movie in full detail, but I just highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. One of the best, if not the best, British movie ever made, in my opinion. That is Dead Man's Shoes. Okay guys, I hope you all enjoyed this top 10 random movie recommendations from my collection. If you like these videos, please let me know down below and I'll do another 10. I'll maybe do 10 a month or something. I enjoy talking about Blu-rays and stuff, so let me know if you've seen any of these films. Do you plan on seeing any of them now after what I've said? And do you even like any of these films? If you don't, let me know down below. We can have a nice discussion about it. I will reply to every single one of you, I promise. Don't forget to check out my Train to Busan review down below, along with lots of other top 10s, and my entire Blu-ray collection will be down below as well. Take it all easy guys. I'll see you all next video.